The Misfits. The people with opinions and the stories behind them. Argue with them. Disagree with them. If you're brave enough, listen to them. The people who think differently don't just shape conversations. They disrupt them. Because the Misfits aren't rare. They're among us.
This episode deals with some wild themes. So if you or someone you know is in need of help, immediate, confidential, and free support is always available 24/7. If you're having a mental crisis, please call or text 988. If it's an emergency call, 911. You can always text the word home, which reaches a crisis text line. And lastly, there's a website available, 988lifeline.org. There's help out there if you need it. You're your biggest advocate, so please, if there's something you need, reach out. Thanks. On to the show.
Guys, welcome today to Misfits Among Us. I am super excited to bring our guest to all of you today. This episode does contain some difficult themes. Just going to say, be a little bit cautious. If kids are listening, you might want to move them out of the room. Today's guest was born into a life of secrets, right? About family, identity, where she came from, everywhere she's went so far on this path. Over the years, she would survive abuse, trafficking, addiction, religious transformation, collapse of multiple identities that she thought defined her, but they didn't. They formed her. It's pretty amazing. What emerged on the other side was something that was totally unexpected. It was a woman who now helps others search for meanings through spirituality, identity, and personal transformation. This is the story of Charna Jacobson. She's a 36-year-old woman from Long Island. Somehow she rebuilds herself after everything falls apart. And I want to welcome you, Charna, to this podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm so happy that I met you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I want to get right into it. And this is almost what I'm gonna say is chapter 1 of your life. This is the beginning. This is when you're born. And most people get interesting the later in life.
Yeah.
Right? From day one, they're usually not like a shotgun. They're not like in it, right? And you are in it. And I want to talk about you being born. So you were born December 1989. You're not that old, right? Let's own up to it. You're not that old at all, right? You're under 40 years old. And you were born to your mom. I'm gonna want you to go into detail here. You were obviously born to your mom, and you lived with your grandparents for the first 7 years of your life. So let's talk about that. I want to establish this basis of kind of where we're going to go.
Yeah. So I had, from what would be the outside, a very normal life, Long Island, middle class, we're what I'll call white. My mom is white, even though, I share another identity, which we'll talk about. But I grew up in a pretty normal home. My grandfather fought in the American Army during World War II. My grandma was a stay-at-home mom. My mom kept up appearances. I didn't know who my dad was. It was kept very hush hush. I was lied about who my dad was. It was like, well, I'm divorced. You're Italian. He lives in Texas. Like, there was a lot of, just right off the bat, I was aware that something was off in that regard because I was a very inquisitive child. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? So seemingly from the outside, it was very normal. I would say, and I don't know if you want me to jump right into this with what happened when I was 3, and the molestation.
Here's my question. I want to talk about your 3, because I think 3 is really, because I think being born until the age of 3, you were a very inquisitive child, and you were always, when you were able to, you were interested about where you came from. And truthfully, meeting you, if you told me, hey, I got an Italian dad, I don't know who he is, I'd believe it in a heartbeat, right? You got the Long Island accent. You literally could be like on King of Queens if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
This is very believable. And if your story stopped there, it would probably be very normal to most people. Most people probably go through this. Absent dad, my mom's taking care of me. I don't know who he is because he's probably a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't need to go any further. But you kept on pushing, and then 3 years old rolled around.
Yeah.
And 3 years old got tough.
Yeah. So even before that, and I know we're only going up until 7 right now. So my mom is very mentally unwell. Now, at 3 years old, at 7 years old, you don't really understand when a parent has issues and even neglect because I had nothing to compare it to. When you're that age, even if you're being abused, you really just think this is normal, so to speak. And so, 3 years old, it happens to be I was molested by a family member. And I actually blocked, I had dissociative amnesia for about 20 years, where I just could not recall the event. Now, my body, right? The body keeps the score. My body and my personality at that age, when you are abused to that capacity, things change. Your personality changes, your body changes. I became a very angry child. By 7 years old, I was in school photos with my fist up, and there was signs and things. I don't know if back then it was so spoken about the way it is today. There's a lot more people coming forward for signs and symptoms and awareness, but it kind of shaped a lot of what would happen down the line. And even still with that, you pair that event and then you pair it with my mother, who is a unmedicated manic bipolar narcissist. By 7 years old, the nervous system for me has now learned what love looks like, and it's not good. It's abuse, and it's unhealthy attitudes and emotions and walking on eggshells and survival. So while I didn't maybe have the understanding of what was going on, by age 7, that set the stage for me for what would carry me later in my life without me even knowing it, unfortunately.
So I mean, so that's interesting, right? So you're so like let's set the scene for everyone. You're born, your mother lives and you live with your grandparents, and probably because, and we'll learn more and more about this, but like your mom couldn't take care of you by herself, right?
No.
That's kind of what we're going to find out. And you lived with your grandparents and you loved your grandparents. I mean, your grandparents were some sort of stability, whether they had it all together or not. They
Yeah.
were at least some sort of cornerstone for you. You said that your grandma was the homemaker and she was more quiet. She was a little bit more reserved. And your grandpa was this World War II vet. I'm sure he was a little bit more boisterous. And I'm sure he didn't probably go in depth in everything that happened, but he was
No.
probably the one that ran that. Knowing that time and the age of those individuals, it was the man who was running the house and he was doing his thing, and the woman took her role. And your mom was, I'm guessing, like a rebellious woman growing up. Um, and you were molested at age 3 by a family member, and you kind of you built these walls in your mind to kind of hide and try to unfeel what was going on. But you kind of, I mean, in one way or another, you knew that none of this was right. Now, just to kind of set the scene here, you also grew up in a Jewish household.
Yeah.
And I think this is very I think this is very timely for everything going on. So, look, I'm Jewish, you're Jewish, and I would say that, not that being Jewish is different. I would just say growing up Jewish is usually there's a larger focus on education. There's a larger focus on culture. There's a larger focus on community. These things exist, right? For everything going on in the world right now, these are still kind of staples of growing up in a Jewish household. And you didn't have a normal Jewish upbringing by any means. It
No.
was a lot more chaotic. And then 4 years old. So all this happened before you were 3 years old.
Yeah.
But then 4 years old rolls around, and what happened?
So 4 years old, I end up getting into a bad accident at a daycare. I had what was called at the time, I probably still is, but it was a montage fracture. So I was tackled by a kid in the daycare. My mom was taking college courses because she was not a college graduate at that point. And this kid pushes me down. My arm snaps and dislocates the elbow, the radial head. So the ulnar bone snaps, dislocates. They can't locate my mom. She was supposed to be in classes. She was off doing, I don't know what. Several hours go by. They rush me to the emergency room. They take the x rays. They did the x rays incorrect. Now, I didn't know this at the time. They put me under for years. I would say about a 3-year period. I had extensive surgeries on my right arm. I had metal rods put in. I had people coming to view these surgeries. It was really not a simple like, oh, you broke your arm, you're in a cast. It was like, oh, you broke your arm. We've never really seen this. Let's teach people about it and let's,
Sure.
film it and everything like that. And so, for the next 3 years, I was being poked and prodded in medical rooms for my arm. My arm still to this day is dislocated. It's deformed. I have a huge scar on my right arm. I cannot pronate my right wrist. I have less than 10% motion. But what's interesting about this, and this is where I get my faith, my emuna, right? Is this accident would get me something called an annuity policy, a med malpractice lawsuit that years later, I mean, we're talking, we didn't sue. The statute of limitation in New York State is like 7 years. We sued right on the cusp of that. That money would be a major factor in the rest of my life. So it's definitely important to note how things, when we don't really understand the threads of our life, like the cause and effect of butterfly, this was something that would actually damage me and save me later in my life. This arm injury and lawsuit. So
This became, I mean, we'll get into this, but I mean, this weirdly became, with everything going on in your life, and everybody can kind of already understand kind of in this chapter, a childhood with secrets, right? That's kind of what this was. You didn't know your dad, your mom made up stories, you were in this bad accident, you hurt yourself, you're getting molested. But weirdly, this ended up benefiting you a lot later on. And truthfully, you probably wouldn't, and we'll get into this, but you probably wouldn't be here as much today if you didn't have some sort of this weirdly financial support that kind of helped you along later on. It wasn't the main thing,
yeah.
but like being where you are later on, and we'll get to it, like having nothing is even
Yeah.
harder. You at least had something, right? So
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's a question because, the money that came in is the money that got me into the circumstance to begin with, and it's also the thing that got me out. So it's definitely debatable, but I will
Sure.
say that generally speaking, it's just interesting to see, you just never know what's going to come of a situation. So,
You never do. I agree. And as a kid looking at you now, you're an anomaly, right? These aren't the stories that you normally hear. You normally hear them going a lot more south. So let's talk about chapter 2. Chapter 2, I would coin as searching for love and belonging, right?
yeah.
You were searching for this. This was between the age of 7 and 16. And a lot happened between 7 and 16, and already a lot happened by the time you were 7. So we're building to the chapters of your life where, like, they're jam-packed with shit. Like, just so much fucking stuff that
Yeah.
you're trying to... So let's talk about this. So your mom, and during this time, ended up finding a guy, right?
Yeah.
Found
I
a
want
gent.
I want to just correct, because we're getting into this. And I think
Yeah.
this will make sense a lot more when people get later in the episode. They're going to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in a Jewish household where people hated being Jewish. My grandparents, after the World War II, kind of left it on the table where they were like, yeah, we're good. Like, we don't need this. And my mom didn't really identify as being Jewish. She hated being Jewish. She was made fun of in a public school. So, what would have maybe given me some stability of having some form of faith was really taken away from me and hidden from me. It was like I didn't know what it meant to be Jewish. I didn't know what it meant to have religion or spirituality in my life. And what brings me to this point of my mom, who she married and the man she found, came from a family of born again Christians and Catholics. So she meets this man in
Perfect match.
college.
This is a perfect matchup, right? I mean, this is like...
Why not?
why not? Right. Yeah.
And what's interesting, it was like, it wouldn't have just been like, oh yeah, we're like Catholic, we go to church on Sundays. No, I had an aunt that lived on a convent that was a nun. Okay, she renounced her life for Jesus. My grandmother was a minister. The whole family was like jam-packed with Jesus people that were like centered Jesus around their life. And my mom was like, oh, well, we don't really believe in anything. Like, we don't care. I have a sister through my mom. She was baptized and raised in the church. And she hid that from her parents, but it was like, here I am, a kid. I have no idea what religion is. I have no idea what it means to be Jewish spirituality. My mom marries this man. And to make, with everything else that would occur, they're like, here's a Bible, here's a nativity set, here's a cross, like, you can't be Jewish. And I'm like, and I was thrown into church, I was thrown into like all of these things. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, and beyond that, beyond the religion, because there's good and bad in everything, they weren't nice people. So like they're judging me, they're leaving me out of family photos, they're being mean and exclusive to me. Some of them were nice, and that was very pleasant. I'm not going to say that they were all bad. But then on top of that, they're like, well, you need Jesus and you need to be religious. And I'm like, why would anybody be religious if this is what that entails? Like it was just it was like going from 0 to 100 very quickly overnight. And it was very awkward.
But here's also what I want to bring up, though, because I find this to be super interesting. So in what you just said, you're saying, I have a sister, I had this aunt, my grandma was a minister. You're giving titles. The sister obviously came from there, but you're giving titles to the people that were never really a part of your family because your mom ended up marrying this guy, and you ended up taking his last name.
He adopted
right?
me. Yeah, he
adopted you.
Yeah, he went through the court system to legally adopt me. I had his last name up until I got married.
Because there was no male name on your birth certificate originally.
Nothing.
Right? Like you essentially had no dad, which
I had no identity on that side.
You had nothing. But
yeah.
So this guy adopts you, and if you look at it from externally from my point of view, this guy adopted you. He clearly loved something about him, loved you. His family took you in. Like, there's something nice about this for somebody who didn't have that safety net or that support within their life. So, right, there's something nice about it.
It comes with strings. So this is, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And so it came with a lot of conditions. It came with, you have to go to church with us on Sunday, stop causing problems. Now, that dynamic alone might have been manageable, but don't forget, my mother is a very mentally ill bipolar.
Right.
And to some degree, I think it's beyond bipolar disorder. I think, we'll get into her going to jail and stuff like that and the attempted murders and whatever. But she was, I will just casually throw that in there. She, was adding to this dynamic of problems because I'm in this new family. I'm a child. She gets married. She, we have this new family. Okay, great. She would do things like steal. Okay, at family parties, we'd go there for Christmas and everybody has the coat room and the pocketbook room. And she would go into that coat room and steal money out of people's purses and then blame me. So the family would be like, I'm missing money out of my wallet. And I'm a kid at this point. I'm, 8, 9, 10 years old. She was telling the family, oh, it's my daughter. It's my daughter. She's on drugs. She's mentally ill. And I'm a little kid and I have no idea this is going on. I ended up finding all of this out years later when she eventually went to jail, but I was so naive to what was happening. So there's this undercurrent of hate and suspicion growing. And I'm getting, everywhere I go, I'm getting blamed for everybody's problems because my mom is orchestrating it. She is the one doing all these things and then orchestrating it that I'm taking the blame. And no one's approaching me because I'm a child and they think I'm a mentally unwell child. And they're like, well, oh, we feel bad for the mom that you have to deal with this. You're such a good mom. I'm so sorry that your child didn't turn out right. It must be because, her father wasn't around. And she just was spinning this web of lies that she was giving me a narrative in a life that I didn't agree to and that I didn't even know was happening until it was too late. So
did you start almost like believing in this narrative because this is what everybody was saying? You became the bad kid. You became the robber.
I thought I didn't know exactly what she was telling people. I wasn't privy to that till later, when she was away. But the hate and the suspicion that people had towards me, I became a child that I didn't understand why everybody hated me, why nobody loved me, like why people looked angry and didn't want me around them or their kids or my cousins or their friends. I was overperforming in school. I was a straight A student. I was in orchestra. I was in the art. I played sports. I was succeeding in school in spaces where I was getting recognition and love that I wasn't getting at home. But then I would come home and come in these environments where I was hated. And so and on top of that, my mother, things that she told me from a young age, I'm talking my earliest memory of her at 5 years old was her screaming at me for drawing the letter C like her and trying to I mean, she screamed at me so badly that I wet myself. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been so feared in a fearful situation that you lose control of your bowels. Like it was horrible. The type of things that she was doing behind closed doors. Nobody loves you. Nobody likes you. Your grandmother wanted me to have an abortion. I loved my grandma. She was like, your grandma
Yeah.
didn't even want you. You're a nobody. Your stepfamily hates you because you're Jewish. This is what she would tell me. They hate you because you're Jewish and you don't have a dad. Your dad doesn't love you. He didn't even want you. Like I brought you to your dad and he said, "Oh, that's not my daughter." And so your voice, right? We talk about nervous system regulation for the first 5 years of a child's life. Not only was my nervous system shot from the abuse and from the injury and from everything else, I have the one person in my life that is supposed to be building me and saying, "You got this. I love you. You're great. You're doing great." And showing me what it means to have love. Because when we think about who really loves us in this world, it's our mom. Mom is supposed to be
Right.
the one that loves us the most. And my mom was the devil. Like she hated me. And I don't think she really hated
And
me
you
at
didn't have
a
anyone
dad.
else,
There's
right?
nobody.
You had
And
nobody else to go to.
no, and my grandparents, I don't believe that I would be alive today had my grandparents not been in my life this first 7 years because my mom didn't feed me. She didn't know how to dress me. Like this was something I carried, embarrassingly enough, into my 20s because I left home at 16. I know we'll get to that, but like I didn't know how to dress myself appropriately for weather because my mom just wouldn't put a coat on me. Like I went to bed hungry. I used to dream as a kid of like I mean, we didn't keep kosher, but like cheeseburger machines, like with a conveyor belt that would bring food to me in my bed. Like these were my fantasies as a kid. And again, no one knew what was happening. From the outside, my mom's on PTA. She's bringing me to basketball games. I'm exceeding in school. So everybody's like, wow, she's the best mom ever. Look at her. Her kid is excelling.
Mhm.
And behind closed doors, it was like, you're a nobody. Nobody loves you. Everybody hates you. And so I grew up believing this, When you pair all of these things, these intricate little things that were threading together, I grew up hating myself and believing that I was just not worthy of anything.
This is also, I mean, this is also like if we look at what abuse is, right? Abuse isn't always, and everyone will know this, but abuse doesn't mean you need to be hit, right? People
Yeah.
used to say, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words may never hurt me. Words fucking hurt, right? Words are
Yeah.
awful. And when words come from your parents or your parent, right? Because you had
Yeah.
one, it hurts more. And let, let's say this though, right? And I think this is interesting, right? Like I fully much believe, and we'll kind of go through this weird spiritual religion thread that you have through your life because
Yeah.
you could have went a million and one different directions, right? Let's own up to that. You could have been any religion at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, being born into a religion and saying you need to drink the juice of the religion, I've never been somebody that's loved, right? I've always questioned my own faith, my own identity. It's been something that I grew up where I would, how dare you do that? It was the same thing, but I stuck with it. And, I'm happy culturally being Jewish, spiritually being Jewish. I'm not really religious. I'm not. I'm culturally Jewish and I enjoy that. And I've said the same thing to my kids. You guys figure out what you want to do, right? It's because I believe it's about you on the inside,
Yeah.
right? You inside have the religion. It doesn't matter to anybody else. It shouldn't.
It doesn't.
Pray to your thing. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I think this was in this searching for love and belonging between ages of 7 and 16, you were introduced to Jesus, you're introduced to the church, but this is really where your love of religion started coming out a little bit, right? Because whether
In
you
an odd way,
liked it or
yeah.
didn't like it, you were interested in this other space, correct?
I think that it was, I've always been, since a very young age, curious. And, I didn't say this, but I'll say it now. I had an uncle who remained religious. He's no longer alive. And I remember he came over the house. I must have been, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years old. I was pretty young. He came over to my grandparents' house and he had a sitter with him and he was davening. He was praying. And
So for those of you
yeah,
that don't know, real quick, so we're gonna make sure that some of the Jewish words here people know. So a siddur, a siddur, what you might have. This is a
prayer book.
Jewish Bible prayer book,
Mhm.
and that's what he had with him. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I picked it up, on the table and I was looking at the Hebrew and I was like, I'm going to learn how to read this. And I was just kind of thumbing through the pages. If you don't read Hebrew, it doesn't look like anything. And my mom had come home and she started screaming at my uncle and my grandfather. And she was like, I told you I don't want her reading this. Don't have it around her. I don't want her exposed to this. Like, she was so anti religion, spirituality, anything, that it was surprising how complacent she was with her husband's family and church and gatherings and communions. And like, it was definitely something, but at that point, because they were such nasty people to me, I started kind of equating religion to, well, if this is who God is, like, I don't want any part of this. This is not
Sure.
like at all like when you see people who are not living in their truth and faith, religion itself can be a beautiful thing, it can be a horrible thing. And when you see
Uh-huh.
people misusing that, it leaves an imprint that you're like, see you later. Like, I don't need this. And that's
No,
kind of what
absolutely.
happened. Yeah.
So absolutely, but you were deep into the church, and you were deep into this with your new father's family, but then something shifted with
Yeah.
new dad. We'll call him new
Yeah.
dad. Something shifted with new dad, and this was around 14-ish,
Yeah.
right? So, like, what happened with new dad around 14?
So you have this whole little bubble kind of growing, and my stepdad and I, generally speaking, got along when we first met. And then my mom got involved. My mom didn't like the relationship I had with my stepdad, so she was jealous. So she started, stealing his stuff, like his grandfather's coin collection. She sold on eBay and then blamed me for it. Oh, Jessica's a kleptomaniac. That's my English name, Jessica. But she, oh, she's a kleptomaniac. She's doing this, she's doing that. And so at 13, okay, I went from being a very quiet, meek child who was just,
Uh-huh.
being kicked around by everybody, including my mom. And something in me snapped. Something in me just was like, I am going to stand up for myself. And I snapped. And instead of just taking the punches that my mom was, figuratively and emotionally giving me and telling me what to do in this, I finally stood up for myself. And when that happened, a new dynamic entered, which is my mother then accused me of hitting her. And so then my stepdad started beating me. So now it became, I can't control you with my words because you're telling me no, you're not listening to me, you're not coming home, and I wasn't like out doing drugs or anything. I just would like
Right.
stay out for, an extra hour. Like, we're talking about innocent things. I know some kids go extreme. We're talking about like fairly innocent things at 13. And so she couldn't control me anymore with the manipulation and the mind games. So now she started controlling me with, okay, well, your stepfather's gonna beat the shit out of you, you know? And
And
so
this
he
is
started hitting
talk
me.
about
Yeah.
talk about the fuck you stutter, because this was like a moment in your life that
This
you
was like the first,
used,
yeah,
right?
it was so interesting and it's so real. Like, it's just the image and the moment is so burned in my brain. My mom was the type of person, just so you know, where it was like she told me to jump and I was like, how high? Because I was terrified of her. I had no
Sure.
self-esteem. I hated myself. I had nobody else in my life. I really didn't have friends. The only kind of love and affection I was getting was from school and my accomplishments. And so I never said anything to my mom. And I was on the phone one day and she told me to get off the phone. And something in me just boiled up and I went, "Fuh." I was like, "Fuh." Like, I was stuttering because I was so terrified. And I was like, "Fuh, fuh,
Sure.
fuh. Fuck you, no." And it was like, whoosh, and something in that moment of me stuttering those words broke the seal for all of that anger and resentment and things that I had been burying within me to come out. And it was like once that seal was broken, I mean, even with the beatings that I was getting from my stepdad, that was it. Like, I was like, "See
You
you."
stood up for yourself.
I
This
stood
was
up for
like,
myself, and the rebellion kicked in. Like, before it was
right.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna hang out with a friend." I mean, I was cutting school. I went from being a straight A student to, like, not giving a shit. I started
Yep.
smoking a little bit of weed, which back then was like, "Oh my god, if you smoked weed, oh," like, that
How
was
dare
the
you?
worst. How dare you? It was, like, the worst thing
Yeah.
you could do. And I would go to the city, during the day, I'd call myself out of school. I stopped caring about class. I stopped caring about my sports teams. I mean, it was really a pivotal moment in my life where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna sit here.
It sounds like, it sounds like that stutter really became weirdly good and bad. It
Yeah.
was good because you stood up for yourself and you were like, everyone back away. This is me. The bad part is this really opened up your life to going down a track that isn't, I mean, granted, you weren't on, what you were on originally wasn't something that was bad because of you. It was bad because of others. Other people were taking advantage of you, hurting you in
Yeah.
many different ways. But now this is really where you started rebelling, but it wasn't just rebelling against your family, it was rebelling against the
Every
world,
everything. Like, everything
everything.
and anything. And I wanna just tell you that I think I'm really big into healing generational trauma, especially from the woman's lineage, right? Because women are in a very pivotal time in history, in American history, with the changes taking place.
Sure.
I would say that in a normal circumstance, what happens to women like me, to girls like me, is they end up living their life in complacency, where they listen to their parents, they listen to their mom, they get married off, they don't cause problems, they marry somebody like their parents. And that moment of it was almost as if, like, 1,000 generations just, like, was choking up through my throat for me to be like,
Sure.
I'm not doing this anymore." Because a lot of people have, their throat chakra is blocked, or there's a wound around expressing their needs and their self, and so that really was, like, it was the floodgates of everything that was to come in good and
But
bad
this was
ways.
so this became almost your pseudo, as bad as analogy is. This was your woman's suffrage movement, right? This is where you
Yeah.
stood up, you had the picket, and you were like, "I'm a woman, hear me roar, back the fuck off." But in the process of doing that, you're like, "I'm now a bull. I'm gonna fuck all of you guys."
And, yeah,
Right?
and it was bad. I was a bull in a china shop in so many ways
Right.
because I was on a path of
So many ways.
self-destruction, yeah, and I was on a path of self-destruction. I stopped going to I got thrown out of one of my varsity teams because I got caught smoking weed. I stopped performing in school. I actually ended up graduating high school with an advanced Regents diploma by the time I was 16 because I was already so far ahead. I had taken
All
so
the
many
AP classes, you did
I
everything.
mean, I was
Yeah.
like, it was like I was already there, like, and my plan from a very young age, like, I didn't know how, but I was like, I'm gonna leave home. Like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And so, one of the last times that my stepfather really beat me tremendously badly. My sister was born when I was 10, so she's 10 years younger than me. So my sister was probably like 5 years old, 6 years old at this time. And he had hit me so bad I ended up in the hospital.
Aye.
And I wake up in the hospital bed and CPS is there. And obviously they're like, well, what happened? Whatever. And my mother was standing, in the room, and she's like, if you tell them what happened to you, your sister is going to go into foster care and she's going to
Mm.
die and you're never going to see her again. And you better shut your mouth and not say anything. And so now, again, the manipulation, right? Because of my mother, I didn't say anything. They weren't hitting, by the
Yeah.
way, just so you know, and this is a key thing. My sister had a completely different incarnation experience than me. My mother did not treat her the way she did with me. She didn't tell her, "I hate you, no one loves you," my sister was raised with love. Like, she was doted on and she was given what she needed and she had my stepdad and it was like she didn't had it been my sister was getting abused the way that I was, I would have said something. I would have been like, "We're getting the hell out of here. Like, I'm not letting you get raised in this situation." But she wasn't. And that was also a very confusing thing for me as a child because I was like, "Wait a minute. Why am I getting not that I wanted my sister to get abused, but the
But why you?
disparaging difference of how we were treated as children." And I'm like, wow, it really must be me. Like there must be something wrong with me that here I have a sister in the same household. My mother treats her kindly and is nice to her. Like there really must be something wrong with me that I'm the only one getting abused in this household,
Yeah.
you know?
Do you
And
still, do you to this day, like, do you talk to your sister at all?
I don't even know where she is. So when I left
Because
home,
of you or because of, and I want
well,
to get into how
it
you left
actually,
home, but just
yeah,
separately.
it actually has a lot to do with, believe it or not, my mom. Surprise. So when I left home at 16, you know, I saw she was safe. I was like, all right, I saw an opportunity. We'll talk about how that happened and the unfortunate circumstances in which that happened
Yeah.
because it wasn't pleasant. But my mom, pretty much a year after I left home, would go to jail for the first time. And when she went to jail, my stepfather took primary custody of her. Now, years later, I don't talk to my stepdad. Haven't talked to him since I'm 19. Another set of unfortunate circumstances. I saw at this point in my 20s, the last time I saw her was at my grandfather's funeral, and I remember saying to myself, my stepdad had remarried at that point. He had other kids her age. They lived in a beautiful house out in Suffolk County. And I just said to myself, I'm like, does she really need me poking around in her life? Does she need me trying to, because I was going to fight for custody of her. I was like, how do I do this? How do I get to the
Yeah.
courts? My mom's in jail. And I kind of just saw that she was okay. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes the best thing to do with muddy water is to let it be and let the
Yeah.
mud settle. And years later, when I would eventually touch base with my mom via email, you know, I remember she wrote me an email and she's like, oh, I still talk to, my sister's name is Michelle. I still talk to Michelle, but this is what she said in the email. She doesn't want anything to do with you. She's very mad at you for what you did to her. And I was like,
Interesting.
oh, I was like, and I have not talked to my mom since my early 20s. I did talk to her about 5-6 years ago when I uncovered another family secret. That was via email. And when she wrote that email, my mom's never met my kids. She's never met my husband, whatever. But I was like, yeah, you know, a tiger doesn't change its stripes. Like I didn't say this to her, but I read that. I'm like, see you later. Like she was almost
Right.
trying to dangle the possibility of reuniting with my sister. My sister would be 26 right now. I'm on social media. If I'm meant to be with her, like the universe will eventually put us back together. She's an adult now, but you know, my mom had basically said, "Oh, she doesn't forgive you for what she did." And then also she had said to me, "Well, you know, if you go to find your sister, they're going to throw her out of the house because of who you are as a person." Like there was so much manipulation that the possibility of me connecting with her, I'm like, you know what? If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. I wish her the best. I've kept her in my prayers, in my diaries since I was young. I mean, there really was a time I was gonna fight for her in my early 20s, and I just was like, she's okay, you know?
So if she came around
She'd be welcome with
instantly, you would drop open
open
arms.
arms. If she
Okay.
showed up at my door and she was like, I don't have a place to live, I don't know, I'm like, come on in. You
Yeah.
know, no problem. And that's my other sister. I know we didn't talk about her, but my other
Yeah, we'll
sister
get
through
to
my
her.
dad, best friend, met her 5 years ago. Love her. We talk every day. Best friend of my life. Like she is
All right,
my
you're making
soulmate.
you're making people get a little too like wet
I
out
know.
there. They don't know what's happening yet. There's all these
I
amazing things
know.
happening. There's so much. Okay, let's talk about that. So you're 16. This
Yeah.
is so much. Okay, so you're 16 years old
Yeah.
and you meet a guy and you're like, I'm getting the fuck out. Right? I'm getting out of my house. I met this dude. You met him at was it the
Pizzeria.
pizza shop? The
Yeah.
pizza,
So
which you know is going to be, he's going to be a stand-up guy.
oh yeah,
Pizza
very.
guy.
He was
So tell us about Mr.
20.
Pizza.
Mr. Pizza. We'll call him Mr. Pizza. He was 28 years old. He worked at the shop that I worked at because I was working since I'm 12. I've always had a variety of jobs, even getting around child
He's
labor
12
laws.
years older than you
Mm-hmm.
at the pizza shop. And you're like, all right, Mr. Pizza,
Well, it was like
sausage, cheese, let's go.
a little too much sausage.
Yeah, I bet.
He was like, he was interested in me. And I was like, oh, okay, you're interested in me. And so without me really understanding again, because there's so much that like was just happening. My mom was like always in the corner lurking, like an evil, like little thing. You know,
Yeah.
he basically went to my mom and he was like, listen, I want to take your daughter. I want her to move in with me. She's graduating high school. We're in a relationship. Like, I love her. Meanwhile, he's a pedophile, obviously, has a history of this. His first, girlfriend or whatever that he had a baby with, she was like 16, 17. She ran off after she gave birth. He's like, I'm going to take your daughter to Ozone Park. And my mom's like, yeah, well, you're going to give me $5,000. Otherwise, I'm calling the cops on you for, child abuse. And he's like, I don't have like $5,000. I'll give you 2,500. Like, people get sold for cows. Here, a negotiation is taking the place of like, how much money is it worth me taking your daughter and not getting called the cops on? Like, it was, I don't know, like very sick when
It's
you're really
crazy.
it's modern
crazy.
day. It's modern day exploitation, slavery in some form. I mean, this
Sure.
is not the trafficking story, but this is kind of like trafficking because it's like
100%.
we're selling you. I'm selling you to a pizza guy, Mr. Pizza.
When you originally told me that you were trafficked and then this came up in our discussion, I was like, this is it, right? My mom sold me for cash to this dude, and this wasn't the trafficking incident, which is even more like
sick,
explosive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, go on. So you move in with Mr. Pizza. You move in with Mr. Pizza. He's 28. You live with him, his mom.
Yeah.
Right?
His son,
brother,
his son and his brother. His brother was actually chill, weird guy. So we live in this. So I'm a suburban girl, right? Even though all this abuse is happening, I'm living in Long Island. There's parking lots and grass. And now I am thrown into South Ozone Park where there's water bugs. I'd never seen a water bug in my life. There's ambulances. And I'm living in this little apartment with him, his son, his brother. His mother was this little old lady who like had a washing machine in the kitchen while she would make meatballs and like washing the socks. And I started working 2 full-time jobs. So, and it's interesting because I was so familiar with Long Island that I would commute back to my hometown to work these 2 jobs. I worked in a warehouse unloading docks, unloading trucks in the morning. And then I worked in telemarketing at night. And so I was working, at 16 and a half years old, I was working 40, 50-hour weeks commuting from South Ozone Park back to my hometown. And at that time, I wasn't legally emancipated, so I could not own a bank account or a cell phone. I don't know if this is still the case. I don't think it is. You used to need credit to open a cell phone back then. Like you had to have established credit. So like I couldn't have a cell phone in my name.
Sure.
So I couldn't have a bank account. So I would get my paychecks, hand it over to my boyfriend, who was also, this creepy old Mr. Pizza guy. And and that was my life. And then I would come home and I would take care of his kid. He would go out. I don't know what he was doing, but I was so relieved to be away from my mom that I was like, to me, I was like, this is great. Like I could feel my nervous system like calm down a little bit. I was like, okay, I don't have somebody constantly berating me, telling me I'm horrible. It wasn't an ideal situation, but at the time it was like, oh, this is great, until it wasn't.
So I mean, you're real, and again, this is all happening by 16, maybe a little bit in 17, and you probably had a realization that escape wasn't freedom, but there was value in escape, right? This leaving was so important to you, even though you were going through all this nonsense and you're with Mr. Pizza and you're giving him all of your money and you're really doing nothing. You're doing nothing good for you by any means, but it was still better than being with your mom. Because that was worse. Right? It was worse.
It was a different type of situation. And it took about a year of me being with Mr. Pizza for me to be like, wait a minute. Like again, I relate a lot. It's interesting because I'm about to tell you, I relate a lot to our most basic needs, our physical needs, having shelter and warmth and clothing and food.
Yeah.
And I recall being cold because I didn't have clothing. This Mr. Pizza, I'm 5'2" for comparison. Mr. Pizza was 6'4". And he was giving me his old clothing because like he wasn't taking me clothes shopping. And I'm a teenager now, okay, mind you. So up until this point, I was really not into makeup. I wasn't into anything girly. I was a tomboy. I had pretty much worn tomboy clothes my whole life. He was giving me his coat and clothing to wear that was just huge on me. And I had needs as like a young teenage girl. I was like, well, I want a little bit of makeup. Like I want like like where do I get clothing? And he wasn't giving that to me. And then he wasn't home, so he was dumping me with his kid. And something in me was like, wait a minute, I deserve more. Like I
Yeah.
want more out of life. Like this is not okay. And
Where did your money go during this time? Like when he
just
would
to
take it,
him,
would you get
yeah,
like
no,
would you
he
get
didn't
like
give
an
me anything.
allowance?
No. No, he said that it
Not
was
at all.
used. We eventually did get our own apartment in Howard Beach, and I don't know what he was doing. It's interesting. Like I don't know what he was doing for work or whatever, but he basically was like, "Well,
Sounds like you were his work, right? You were getting money,
yeah." He
giving
said
it to him.
he did get me an old car, like a Honda Civic, and he's like, "Well, it's going to the car, it's going to rent, like it's going to groceries, like." He kind of just justified that my work was paying, like I was a burden to him, and it was like essentially covering the fact that he got me a car and he got an apartment. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I didn't question it until like my needs were just like, wait a minute, I don't have clothing that fits me. I would like some makeup. I'd like to like, like look like a woman, like
Yeah.
I just wanted to my desire for more was what kind of kept me awake to what was happening, because here I left abusive situation. Okay, cool. A year later, I'm like, all right, well, now what? Now what? I
Right.
want more. And when my car, so at 17, my car flipped over in Howard Beach. I was making a left at a red light. A couple blew the red light. They clipped me. My car rolled over 3 times, crushed like a tuna can. I should have been dead. Um, should have been dead a lot, but I should have been dead at that
Yeah.
moment. And I crawled out of the side window. There's a group of people standing around me. They're like, "You need to go play the lottery. Like you should." I had no marks on me other than like a little cut from a piece of glass that I fell on the windshield because my
Yeah.
seatbelt was hanging me. And I will add this to something. Right before this accident, there was a voice that told me to put on my seatbelt. Now, this is very common for me, spirit and stuff, but at the time I didn't know what was happening. And it was like, you need to put your seatbelt on. And I was blasting Fall Out Boy and I heard it so loud and clear. And I was like, okay, I put my seatbelt on. And then, like, within 30 seconds later, that impact happened and that seatbelt saved my
Wow.
life. And so I got out of the car and I had no car. I had really a lot more limited freedom. I had a coworker taking me to work, and
Yep.
my 18th birthday was approaching. And at 18, we talked about my injury. I was getting a very large sum of money. The way that it was
Mhm.
structured when I ended up suing for my arm is I was getting payouts every year. My dream was to become a lawyer. So I wanted to get payouts every year that would help me get through college. So for this first year, it was around $40,000 when I turned 18 that I was supposed to get. And I knew this money was coming, and I'm like, "You know what?" I'm like, "I'm gonna get my own place. Like, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get a car, I'm gonna quit my job, I'm gonna get my own place." I ended up telling this guy, like, "Yeah, I'm moving in with my mom. I just need a break. Like, I'm gonna, go to college for a little bit." And I don't know what I said to him for him to be like, "Yeah, okay." But behind the scenes, I got an apartment, I got a car, I enrolled in college, I quit my jobs, and it was like
Where did
maybe
this money go? Because you couldn't have your own bank account and stuff.
So that's
I
the
know this comes up, and
problem.
really, this is really your chapter through your freedom without guidance, right? This is like
Ugh,
you're like,
mm,
I'm gonna do it for myself. I'm gonna cross that line. It's now gonna be about me. But it
yeah.
wasn't really about you, right?
Mm-mm.
Because you weren't able to do that yet. So you walk away from this guy at 18. Your accident settlement money finally starts coming in. This is great. You're renting your own place. But mom came back because you
Well,
needed mom.
I brought mom back because at this point, so we glazed over something. Let's go back to mom being
Okay.
in jail because
Rewind.
rewind
Oh,
for a minute.
rewind.
Yeah, let's
Yes.
rewind for a minute. So
Talk about it. Mhm.
I left home at 16. I move in with Mr. Pizza. We'll call him for Mr. Pedo Pizza.
Mr.
And
Pedo Pizza.
yeah, and so right around the time that I move out, which is 17, right before the car accident, like this is all kind of lining up at the same time. really a little bit before that, I come back home to visit my sister and my mom is not there. Now, I had been calling the house to talk to my sister and my mom, and she kept telling me my stepdad was ill. Now, my stepdad's a nurse. Well, he was a nurse. I don't, and he was being hospitalized for blood pressure issues, which again, I have no idea what's going on. I'm in Ozone Park taking care of a kid, trying to avoid water bugs in the middle of the night, crying my, my eyes out, working. And so I come home to visit my sister, and my mom's not there. And immediately the house is heavy, the energy in the house. I'm like, what is going on? And I run upstairs and I go in my mom's room. Her purse is on the bed. There's all these checks, receipts. I actually saw a lot of stuff from my childhood that went missing was like in the drawers. Like her room was destroyed and disheveled. And all of like the stuff that I thought I lost, she had hidden in drawers and everything. It was a mess. And so I'm like, what happened? And my stepdad's like, sit down, we need to talk.